So I wanted to just come on and give a little bit about my story and what prompted me to start this YouTube channel. My name is Inez McDonald. I am currently a resident in the state of Georgia. And, um, you know, God is so amazing. He truly is. He's truly, truly, truly amazing. And there's been many times in my life where I've said, you know what, God, I'm just going to do my own thing. I don't need you. And God was like, okay, you can have it your way. But I quickly realized, or actually, some of it was not quick, but I realized that no, I can't do it without God. Um, I was born in New York to a wonderful family where I was actually adopted into a family of a famous jazz musician, Milton Hinton, and his daughter is my mother. She raised me from the time I was 2 weeks old, her and her husband, and we ended up actually moving down to the state of Georgia, and that's where I grew up. I had a great relationship with my grandparents growing up and would even travel back and forth to New York during the summer for Christmas. Sometimes Thanksgiving we would go. And then some other times we would um, travel to see them or they would come down to see us too. But there was one time of year that they would come down in the springtime, and there was always a smaller Atlanta Jazz Fest, not the big Atlanta Jazz Festival, but a smaller Atlanta Jazz Fest that was hosted in a hotel near Dunwoody, if you're familiar with the Atlanta area. And my grandfather would always come and perform with some other really awesome jazz greats. And that would be an awesome time for me because I would get to spend time in a nice fancy hotel with my grandparents. And I always felt so special. I mean, they always made me feel so special. And I'm sorry, I was trying not to tear up, but just these memories coming back, I just had so much love. There was always just so much love for my grandparents. And even for my parents, my mom and dad, they weren't perfect. Um, and they definitely did not have the perfect relationship, but they did their best to show me love and to make sure that everything that I needed was taken care of and everything that I wanted was taken care of. I was their only child between them, and I had a older brother and sister who were actually around the same age as my mom. So there was a 20-year age gap between my mom and my dad. And not only that, my mom and my dad were an interracial couple, which, in the late 80s, early 90s, that wasn't common. In New York, it was a little more common, but down here in the South, not as common. But that's what I grew up around, was seeing, an interracial couple together. And I thought that in my mind was normal. So fast forward, um, I ended up starting at a Christian school local to the Atlanta area because my grandparents wanted me to go and have a private education. They had worked very, very hard, even during the Great Depression and all throughout the 40s, 50s, and 60s to build a little bit of a good life for themselves and to be able to pass that on to their family. And with that, they wanted me to go to have a private Christian education because they were always talking to me about Jesus and always talking to me about the Lord. And, that's where I learned um, more about the Bible. I heard how good God is and how much Jesus, loves you. But even though I felt like I knew that Jesus loved me, I really didn't feel close to Jesus. And I would always see kids as I got older, I'd always see kids that were like, they just seemed like the perfect child. They were always doing the right thing, they were always helping people, they were going on mission trips, they went to church all the time. And I just didn't feel like that was me. And I was like, well, if this is what it means to follow Jesus, then I mean, I don't know if that's what I want. And just know I am skipping over quite a few years. Um, and I can always go back and run down in detail more um, other aspects of my life, but this is just me really talking more about getting to how I came to this place where Jesus is king. So really, I'm going to start my story right now. When I was maybe about 13 years old or so, um, I was very, very young and lost my virginity. And that's kind of when everything started to go downhill, so to speak, in my life spiritually. I started sneaking around. Um, I started hanging out with people I should not have been hanging out with, but all the while living this like double life as like this good girl who goes to a private Christian school who says I love Jesus, but in the background I am being very bad. So, fast forward a few more years and I'm skipping over a few other incidences, but I can always come back to that. But I would say around 2000, that's when my grandfather passed away. And it didn't really hit me because I was so like self-absorbed, being the only child when all the attention is on you. You get self-absorbed and you think everybody's supposed to be like there to serve you. Um, and while I was just spoiled, I was rotten, spoiled rotten. I now realize that that is absolutely not the case. Um, but I still had a heart in all of this to help and serve other people. My heart was still moved for children that needed help, or that were poor, or not in the same circumstances that I had. That I was blessed. And I mean, I wouldn't say that my family was the wealthiest. The school that I went to, there were some rich families, but regardless, I don't think my family was the wealthiest, but we were comfortable, we were blessed. But my grandfather passed away in 2000, and there was a huge ceremony, and I just saw how many people loved him and honored him. I mean, people came from all over the world. And when I say like, there was, I forget the name of the church, but it was a cathedral in Harlem. I mean, it was like literally like, and I'm not trying to throw names, but this is how like how loved my grandfather was. I mean, like Al Roker's father came to his funeral. God bless his soul. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar came to his funeral. Um, as many musicians as you could think of that played with him over the years. People from Sweden came came to his funeral. I mean, just and then they would all come and like say hello to me. I mean, I was like 14 years old at that time, and they would all come and say hello to me. And in my mind, I'm like so shallow. I was thinking, oh, this is all about me, even though I knew it wasn't. I in my mind, them talking to me, I was like, oh, I'm special. But shortly after that, after my grandfather died, I was sad, but it didn't hit me that hard. And my father, who was 20 years older than my mother, he was in his 70s at that time, started getting sick. And, when I was in fifth grade, he did have prostate cancer and got treated for that and, you know, overcame that, had radiation and surgery for that, overcame that. But he was in and out of the hospital. So in my mind, I'm now 16. I'm thinking, my dad's going to get better. Everything's going to be good. And he did for a time. He did. But over the next year, he was in and out of the hospital. He was losing weight. Um, there was even time that we drove up to New York and had accidents. It was just very sad to see my dad deteriorate now that I look back on it. But at the time, I really didn't know what was going on because I was so young and I didn't understand. So, fast forward to summer of 2003. Um, I was probably just turned 17. My dad was in and out of the hospital more now, more so than ever. And that summer, I started like doing drinking alcohol, um, smoking weed, doing drugs, hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I was like, oh, well, it'll all be good because I can just rebound once my dad gets better. Like, he'll get better and I'll be fine. And I'll, come out of this, no problem. Well, I start my junior year in high school, still going to the same private school that I started in when I was, young. I was actually in kindergarten when I started there. The junior year of 2003, 17 years old, and I remember, I'll never forget the date, on September 17th, 2003, my father actually passed away. And it was so surreal because he was like in and out of the hospital, but this time around he had been in the hospital for really like about 2 weeks, and he was even in like ICU for a little bit of time until finally he moved over to hospice. Now, this is my first encounter with hospice. I'd never heard of hospice, didn't know what hospice was, but I went in probably the week before he passed away to go see him, and he was like completely out of it. But when you looked at him, he had this like, his skin was like glowing. It was just a glow to his skin. And I remember looking, I was like, Dad, hey, I'm here. And he was just mumbling like I couldn't understand what he was saying, but I was trying to get his attention or him to look at me, and like I thought he would be, come back around and be himself. But he never looked at me. He kept talking, and I was like, Dad, it's Inez. And like he couldn't say my name. And now that, of course, that I look back on it, I realized that that was him like transitioning. Um, and it was just, I just didn't, it never registered in my mind what was going on. And I wasn't prepared. So, fast forward about a week or so, he ends up passing away. And I was at the time, with a boyfriend that I shouldn't have been with. Um, Nothing against him, but I just shouldn't have been with that person. And I just broke down. I broke down crying because I honestly really didn't expect my dad to die. So it wasn't too long after that um, we had the funeral. A lot of my, a few of my friends came from school to my dad's funeral and to help out. Of course, one of my best friends who I grew up with as well, her family came, and they supported us in the way that they could. But after that, like my grades started declining because I wasn't going to school. I was in a very deep, dark depression, a very dark, dark place. Um, it was just very dark. And during that time, um, at my school, I got called into the, academic advisor or principal's office at the time. And I just remember going in with my mom and them telling me, like, well, we're so sorry. You're not going to be able to attend here anymore because your grades. And I was like, I knew because I hadn't been going to school. I was, you know, parked somewhere else, hanging out with people I shouldn't have been hanging out with, even hanging out with some kids that were going off to other parking lots from the school as well and doing things they shouldn't have been doing. Um, but I just felt so alone in that in that time and in that moment because that was the only school that I knew. I had started there as a kindergartner, and I mean at this point I was 17, almost 18 years old in my junior year, and I didn't know anybody else, and I literally had to start all over. So, fast forwarding a few more years, I ended up getting pregnant with my oldest son, Cameron. I was 18 when I was pregnant with him, and I had him when I was 19, and it literally, like, having him literally changed my life. I was still doing a lot of the, drugs and like smoking weed and drinking and going out and partying even after I had him. But the difference was is that I realized that I had something to live for because I truly did love my son. He made a new place in my heart. And during this time, like I never really thought to call out to God. But there was one night I was literally like hanging out of my window in my house, like with the window open, hanging out of the window, smoking. And I just looked up because I just felt so defeated, so hopeless inside. I just felt so empty and dark and black on the inside. And I looked up and I looked at the stars and I was like, wow, like the sky is just so beautiful. And I just thought to myself, I was like, if God really is real, like he will answer my prayer right now. And I said, God, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I have this child here to live for, and I know that what I'm doing is not right. Please help me to stop smoking. I'm sorry, y'all. Please just help me get my life right. And I really didn't hear anything. I didn't um, see anything happen, but I mean, I just really didn't see a change. So I'll say, like, I fast forward a few more years. I started actually like just reading my Bible a little bit more, trying to do the right thing. I was still like going out and hanging out and doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing, but it had calmed down a lot more because I started maturing. I got a decent job at the time. It was a good job for me at the time. And was just trying to, find my way and be the best mom that I could be. So actually along the way, before I got the good job, I ended up meeting a young lady who worked with me at a restaurant job that I had. I was enamored with her and her relationship with God. She spoke so passionately about God, and it made me all the more curious because I wasn't as close to God as she was at that time, but her zeal and her passion for God and how good God was to her motivated me to want to know more. And still to this day, she and I, we aren't the best of friends, but we speak occasionally. And I truly, truly, truly am thankful to her. And I'm hoping she knows who she is if she ever sees this video. But I am truly thankful to her because she doesn't know, but her passion and just her boldness to speak about the Lord and her love for the Lord helped me grow closer to the Lord. So if you ever see this, good job. You have definitely done what God has called you to do. And I hope so many other people are blessed by you. Not too long after meeting that friend, I ended up meeting my second oldest son's father. And like I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the guy, which I'll go into that story at a different time, but it turned out to not be. I am definitely blessed to have my my second oldest son. He was just another blessing, and I did so much to make sure that he had the best life possible. But in that time, when I realized that that relationship wasn't going to be it, there was a day that I was just so exhausted, so exhausted, mentally, physically, emotionally. And I went to my mom's house, who lived about an hour away from um, where his family lived. And I just went to sleep. There was nobody there but me and the cat. And I just went to sleep because I was so tired, just drained, exhausted from fighting, from, feeling unloved, um, just feeling like my life didn't matter anymore. And like I said, I was there by myself. I was in my old room, sleeping on the bed. And as I'm laying there, I like wake up and I hear a voice, a loud voice call my name. Inez. 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 Very calm, soothing voice. And I get up and I look around. I'm like, was that the cat? My cat's name was Buenos Dias. And I was like, there is nobody here who could possibly be saying my name audibly like that. Yeah, definitely an encounter. Right before, my second oldest son was almost 2, his father tried to kill me. And I remember looking like, God, like, I've been going to church because I'd really been going to church and really seeking the Lord and was just trying to end that relationship because I knew it wasn't right. It wasn't what was best for myself and my sons. But I was also trying to do the right thing so that he could maintain a relationship with his son, and he chose to make other decisions that day. But I remember like time almost pausing as I'm sitting there looking at like this gun in my stomach. And I just remember time almost pausing and like thinking to myself, like, this is not the way that this is going to end. Like, I know this is not the way that this is going to end. And somehow everything just stopped. And it was like he backed off. And I was able to get away. But from that time on, even though it was painful, like God really showed up in a huge, huge way. Like it was almost like he just swooped in his presence. And it was like I knew it was God. I could hear him speak to me. He came and I really love to write. I do. It wasn't necessarily my strong suit, in school, but I really do love to write. So he would just, I would just write what I was hearing in my spirit. And it was just words of just encouragement and comfort. And I truly, truly, truly thank God every day for bringing me out of that deep, dark, dark place that I was in. It was so dark. Because without God, I wouldn't be where I am today. But definitely more to my story. That is not it. But I just wanted to share because if there's any single moms out there who are feeling hopeless, who are trying to get out of that horrible relationship that you thought was right, but you realize now, like, oh my gosh, this is not it. Like, God, please run to God. Run to him. I promise you, he will swoop you up so quickly. He will swoop you up so quickly and show you the love that you actually are supposed to have and the love that you crave. And if there's anybody who, you know, was considered having a normal childhood where you had a family, a mom and a dad who loved you, who were there, who weren't divorced, but maybe had their own problems and issues, but tried to make it work for your sake, but you always felt lonely at the same time. There's hope. There's hope for all of us. And like now, the way that God is moving and is choosing to use me has like my mind blown. He's so good, y'all. But I just wanted to be honest and truthful. Um, and I'll talk a little bit more about like where I am now and how God has shown me like a lot of the gifts and the abilities and the talents that He's, placed on me and shared with me, because I want this channel to inspire and help and bless others. And I want this channel to be a place where you can come and you know what your gifts are and what your calling is in the body of Christ. I mean, if anybody is not qualified to be a child of God, it is definitely me. I have been through the darkest of the dark. I've done bad things. I've said bad things. But y'all, God is merciful and He's gracious and He's good. Yes, that's my dryer. It sings. But I hope y'all have a fantastic day and God bless y'all. And if you want me to tell more of my story, comment below.